In this video, let's break down with you a technique called diving into hell. It is the most, I would say, dangerous, the most unpleasant technique, but it is nevertheless one of the most effective. So, I'll tell you what it's all about. Before that, what its dangers are. It consists in the fact that a person, as a rule, is unpleasant to be immersed there, in this hell. And usually a lot of people try to snap out of it, try to stop working in the trance, and try to get out of it. If a person isn't prepared, they probably will be. But I recommend using this technique only with trained patients that you have been working with for a long time, who already know the basic ways of immersion, who already know how to work on their situation. If a person has already had tears, has already worked through the situation to the point of tears, then in this case, yes, this technique will be effective, and you will be able to cope with it. But if you try to run it on someone who is out of the loop, who doesn't understand what's going to happen and how, you can get negative results. It's best not to do that. So, what is the essence of the plunge into hell? For example, a person has a problem, and we put it at the top of the list. In the lead. So we have a problem. This technique differs from other trance and hypnosis techniques, in that a particularly strong and long immersion is not required. However, I still recommend that you spend a fair amount of time immersing yourself. Immersion, relaxation. For at least 10 minutes. Yeah, let's write for 5 to 10 minutes. 10 is a lot. In order to do it more effectively, like any other, it's better to relax as long as possible. Man, prepare. If you have any doubts that he can handle it, so longer is better. So, let's define the problem. I mean, we're communicating with a person, asking a question. What did you come through with? What was the problem? What was the challenge? We recognize her. Next, we use immersion in the actual technique of diving into hell. It is quite simple to perform, but psychologically it is difficult to endure it, because the role of a psychotherapist, hypnotherapist, is an endurance. Not to snap and take the person out early. So your hardest task will be to hold the person and not let them veer to the right or left. For example, a person has a problem. I don't know, let's take the fight with my mom. He's got a mom and he had a fight with her. He comes about it, he worries about it, he cares about it. The example of what I'm going to talk about now is pretty powerful. Therefore, to illustrate directly what is the essence of the plunge into hell, we will consider such a case. It will be heavy for some even at the point of explanation. For example, you had a fight with your mom. That's it, we've got the person immersed, and we start this technique. We're going to ask monotonous questions. It's a very simple, monotonous question. So what's next? What could be worse? That's it. And most importantly, to lead a person to what, I'll say a little later, yes, lead until that very moment. And this is the path where we start from the problem. Yes, this is the problem. Start leading it to the solution. This is the path. It can be either short or very long. And the task of the psychotherapist is to endure this path so that the person reach from the problem to a solution. Yes, it will be difficult. Yes, it will be challenging. Both the therapist and the patient will have a difficult time along the way. But at the end, when this task is solved, everyone will be happy and satisfied. So, to hell. That means we're going to have the most important question of all. What could be worse?
Хуже.
Even worse. That's it. That's the main issue on the agenda. So let's break it down. So, let's try to imagine that we're doing this technique to a person who had a fight with their mom. A technique for diving into hell. We ask, imagine this situation. We, after the dive, have to clearly visualize to the person what happened. So he's describing the situation, what happened. And let's say mom's upset, she's crying, she's not happy. How are we going to solve this problem? We say, okay, she's very upset, she doesn't understand you, you don't understand her, you're not aware of what's going on at all. What could be worse than your mom being upset? And a person starts to think in a trance, for example, well, maybe her health will deteriorate. We say, well, what could be worse? What could be worse if her health deteriorated? And the person says, well, she might, for example, have a heart attack or stroke there. She'll have to call an ambulance and go to the hospital. We say, well, what's the worst that could happen? And the man says, well, she might die, starts crying. For example, we say, okay. But usually, if we get to the word death in this technique, it means that already we are deep, already normal, yes, already reached. And the person has to kind of accept the situation. He says, well, it can't get any worse than this. We say, okay, let's imagine there's something worse, that could be even worse. And we straight up have to lead that person all the way and make them think of something that could be even worse. For example, he says, well, it could be worse, she'll be in agony. We say, okay. And what could be worse? He says, well, it's worse if she has, say, her leg cut off in there. How's she gonna be in there? Good. What could be worse than having her leg cut off? For example, the following. Well, they're gonna cut off 2 of her legs. Okay, what could be worse? He says cut off another arm, then cut off another arm. And this way, for example, she'll go crazy or she'll be hysterical. Okay, what could be worse? It could be even worse if I look at her and go crazy and feel bad. Okay, what could be worse? The man says, well, it's worse if a brick from a tree falls on me while I'm walking under his windows. Good thing it could be worse. He says, well, it's worse, like, I'm going to die. He says, yes. You say, okay, well, what could be worse? The man says, yeah, it can't get any worse than that. If she's doing bad, I'm doing bad. It can't get any worse than this. You have patience and keep going. I understand, try to imagine what could be even worse. And the man is, God, well, worse, already. Begins to fantasize unbelievable events, yes. But worse. Says if all my relatives die. Well, okay, what's the worst that could happen? The man says, yeah, it can't get any worse than that. No more me, no more her, no more relatives, no more anyone. What could be worse? You're talking, again, patiently, aren't you? And I get it. But imagine what could be worse. And the person is already getting nervous, frantic, anxious. Already he doesn't like it at all. And your job here is to endure and endure. Next. He says, but I don't know what could be worse. A meteorite falls to Earth, and that's it, and life on Earth stops. You say that, and what could be worse? He says, that's it, it can't get any worse than this. It's when there's nothing. That's it. No land, no life, no life, no life, no one, no life, no nothing. Emptiness. Here you go. This is the point where we've reached the void. Generally, if a person has gotten to that point, they may get to it quickly, or they may get to it slowly. When he reaches emptiness, when he has no emotions, he is no longer nervous, no longer terrorized, he is calm, because he understands that this is emptiness, and nothing can be taken from it. It's no longer emotionally colored in any way. So we took the problem out, we took it to the absurd, we took it to the max, we took it to the absurd, we took it to the max, we showed the person that it could be worse, and worse, and worse, and worse, and in the end we came up empty. So the worst that can happen is emptiness. And so when we got to that point, it shows that our session was basically a success. The person has traveled this path, and most likely he or she will already have a completely different attitude towards this original situation. That is, we changed his attitude to this, that here he came, and there is nothing worse for him in life. Here for him all the events have filled his whole life, and he is very therefore worried about it. With this exercise we have shown that it can be even worse by far. And now he has already treated this situation. If he was 100% negative, now he treats it 30% negatively. Remove that negativity. Remove that negative emotional coloring. To be able to think rationally in this situation, to be able to interact in some way, and to be able to come out of it in a more positive way, to cope with this situation.